Welcome to Life by Design, episode 303. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Horatio Jug.
Pause. What's up?
I did it. I paused.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I paused too. I even said, pause. What's up?
You sound like Borat.
Borat.
A pause.
This suit is
What's
great.
up?
Pause. Not.
We are creators of Life by Design with 25 certified locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today's episode, looking at the year, not just in review, but we do this every year, Horatio. What did we learn? What did we take away from the year? Is there anything we can add to our listeners in a way that would benefit them from what we did, both in the context of some successes, but also in the context of many of the areas that we failed this year? Because I think that's important to note. And you started your show notes this week with the quote from Warren Buffett, and you were saying that 20 years ago he didn't or wouldn't invest in tech because he didn't understand it. But it wasn't like he just gave it up. He knew it was something he'd probably be interested in. And so behind the scenes, he was actually trying to figure it out and went ahead and invested in Apple. And Apple became the first company in history worth $1 trillion.
Yeah, I was listening to the Investors podcast and they were talking about this story. I just think it's amazing how you have this guy who, he's old, right? Like Warren's close to 80. Mm-hmm. He's extremely wealthy. There's no reason for him to continue this based on what most people would think. You've done everything, you've seen everything, and yet he just loves the game and learning so much that he continues no matter what. Right. And 20 years ago, it was, I would never invest in a company that I don't understand. He still has that philosophy. Just over 20 years, he learned how to understand this whole sector and these other companies.
Right. And so why should our listeners care about this, Horatio?
Because this is how you're going to get better. Because there's things that you want to accomplish. I hope there's things that you want to accomplish in your life. There's goals, there's dreams, there's visions. And, one of the things, I'll kick it off. One of the things that became really crystal clear this year is there's this idea that, when I get to this place, things will be easier and I'll have to do less. And the exact opposite is true. The further you go, the harder it's going to be. Right. There are going to be more people. There's going to be more obstacles. There's going to be more people who are there to cut you down. There's going to be more people who tell you that you're crap. There's going to be more people who want to take something away from you because now you're somebody and you're having success. So one of my lessons is just the further that I go and the more quote unquote success that I experience, things are not going to get easier. They're actually going to do the opposite and get harder. So if you want things to remain easy in your life, that's incompatible with any type of goal success.
Yeah. Well, I think people see success in whatever way, shape, or form they envision that. And they see some of the rewards that come along with that, or different, whether it be tangible things like cars and houses and trips and other things like that. And they think, well, I want that.
Right.
They don't always recognize or are not privy to all of the things that come with that. And I know the same was for me true in that sense. You especially now social media, it's so easy to see, at least the appearance of success. And I mean, in some of those cases, it's probably not the case and it's probably not so, but nonetheless, you see all the physical, tangible rewards and this looks great. What a life, what a lifestyle. But you don't always understand the behind the scenes or the challenges or the obstacles that come along with that. So I think that's great wisdom, Horatio, because it's absolutely true. And as our businesses have grown, as Life by Design has grown, as our practices have grown, we look back to the time when we were super stressed and had no money and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and all those challenges. And sure, there was some, I don't know what the word is, joy in that, and kind of you and I and a few others kind of creating. But, the further you go, the more complicated it gets, the more challenging it gets, the faster things start to move, the quicker you need to make decisions, and the bigger the stakes become. The losses 10 years ago weren't going to have as big of an effect But now the losses are huge. And so you're risking more on a regular basis. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this, because it's an absolute blast and it's fun. And I find it enjoyable. It's like you were talking about Buffett enjoying the game. I love the game. But don't think that it's just going to come easy and it's going to be a downhill slide. It comes with there's a cost for that.
Well, that's why specifically I chose Buffett. There's lots of good examples of this type of thing in 2018, but I specifically chose Buffett because all he talks about is the game. He still lives in the same house he bought in 1950 in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. He doesn't live in Manhattan. He doesn't live in Los Angeles. He hasn't bought an island. He's just some dude from Nebraska who loves the game. And this is where the real secret is you can start loving the game right now. You don't need the like when things get really tough, the only thing that keeps me going is that I love the game so much. Because sometimes you're just like you hit a point, you're like, do I really want to deal with this shit anymore? Like, I'm done. I want to be done. I don't want this stress. But you just love the game. You could never give up doing that specific thing.
Yeah, and I like, in the notes, talked about the end of year being such a great time for reflection. And that's how I use it every time. And I always book some time off. And this year we'll be spending Christmas here with my family. And then we're heading down to Florida to spend time with Dana's family. And, it'll be a mix of time with the family. And it's a great opportunity because obviously the Nona and Papa want to take the grandkids. So,
yeah, of course,
we get some time to step away, to reflect, to, meet personally for Dana and I, for me to sit down and think about some of our businesses. And I think, for me, what I learned this year is just how much, even in this kind of lends itself to what you were saying, but just how much I value my free time, just how much I value freedom in that sense. It's such a big value for me that the last year in the growth phase of, say, opening Charlie's Cafe, it's been so intensive. And especially you look at even the last 10 years, there's been so much of growth phase type activity. It's become very tiring, and it does wear on you. And thankfully I love the game. And that's why, getting up at 3:45 is doable. It's because I love the game. But I'm also realizing that in this creating my life, or this life by design, I don't always have to be playing the game, right? I could play a different game sometimes if I want to, and that's okay. And so for me, that's my big takeaway. And that's what I'm going to be working on this year is how can I figure out how to scale what we're doing and how we can still continue to impact people's lives, where at the same time, I can now have portions of my life that I haven't had in a long time.
I think that's still the game. Another to kind of change topics and to build on that. Another thing that I really realized, and I hear it a lot with people. I started noticing this when people would say, "Well, I'm having trouble working out. I'm lazy, or I procrastinate." It's like it's this idea of clarity. If you're not clear on exactly, I'm actually fascinated how clear, high level people are on what they want to achieve and what it looks like in all aspects. But if you're not clear, like going back to the example of in the gym, people think they procrastinate or they lack motivation, but really they're just not clear on what to do, where to go, what the rep scheme is, what it looks like. So I've noticed that there's the areas of my life where I've tended to lack motivation or procrastinate the most are also coincidentally the areas where I lack the most clarity. And a big lesson that I learned this year, and I'm still learning it, is sitting down and gaining clarity before you proceed forward. That's and just how wonderful that's been.
Oh, great show. I'm thankful for you that you've done that because, I've always said that, every hour of strategic planning is worth 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 hours of time and energy saved in, whatever activity that you're planning for, getting clarity on. And I just can't, stress enough that scheduling time to have these thought processes to plan out, what it is that you want before you go ahead and start doing things. And we're just so quick to, excuse me, still processing here, still quick to, we're still so quick to just start doing stuff. And, we'd be so far ahead if we just took time to sit and to plan things out. And I think that's a great question to start with is, I know it sounds broad and generic, but it's what do you want? And you could obviously break that down into the different areas of your life. And you can see we've done that in the Think by Design challenge and the manual, which we'll put in the show notes for you guys. And, asking yourself, all right, when it comes to, relationships, what do I want? When it comes to health, what do I want? And to dream up, what this looks like for you. And then you can start to come up with a plan or come up with a strategy that'll help you get there.
Just to add to that, it doesn't need to be. I think this was one of the errors that I was making before. It doesn't need to be grandiose, right? Like, what do I want my legacy to be, or what do I want my health to be? Those are great questions, and I believe like you should have answers for that. But like, literally, a question is, what do I want to do with my wife today? Like, what do I want this day to look like? What do I want? How do I want this activity with my children to go? Like, even really tangible things, having an idea of what the end is going to look like, even if the end is like an hour or two away,
Right.
has been super helpful starting the activity. And then like when things break down, because you're dealing with children, inevitably there's going to be like 5,000 or 6,000 breakdowns in like 2 hours. They're just easier to deal with. There's less stress because you've thought about, and you've had like five, and it literally, this is like a minute process to think about something that's very tangible, but because you've thought about it and you've gained clarity on it, it becomes much more easy. There's more ease in the situation.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. I've never really, at least not consciously, thought of that and applying that to, specific instances in a day-to-day situation, or playing with the kids, or, going to grab groceries or going to do something. But yeah, I mean, I guess same idea. You could apply that in those individual cases and get something out of it in terms of the clarity as well. So in terms of health, Horatio, anything that you really took away this year specifically to your health, any changes that you've made that really had a big impact on you that would be valuable for people listening to the podcast?
So, I mean, I don't know how valuable this is going to be. The biggest change rolling forward is that we are, and again, this just might seem like ridiculous to some people, but for us, the biggest thing that we're going to do moving forward is we're actually moving to like no off-track meals a week. So we're going to go straight up, because what we found was even if we said one, sometimes one was easy to turn into two into the next day. But I do think thinking about this is how I got to this point, because I just always imagined myself, I created this identity where I just ate well all the time, right? It's just interesting to take the next step. I think that's the big takeaway for people listening, right? Is I created this persona of who I wanted to be some future event in time, like forward. And then I just slowly started acting like how that person would act. And it's just amazing how we hate being out of integrity so much that either one of two things are going to change, right? Either you're going to change your belief or you're going to change your actions. And I just wasn't okay with changing that belief. I never let that belief go, that I was going to be a person who could eat healthy all the time.
Well, I just had this exact conversation with a consulting client today, and we were going through values. And, I said one of the next pieces of the assignment is to then ask yourself, what type of character traits would I have to have in order to progressively pursue these values?
Right.
And, we think about, okay, I have these values, and then we think about what to do, but we don't think about that intermediate step, which is, what type of person would actually do these, and consciously thinking about things like, I need to be patient, or I need to be ambitious, or I need to be diligent, or I need to be organized, or, you could actually focus on the character trait and the being that person, because, again, if you're not that person, or you don't have those character traits, or you're not at least developing them, the chances of you actually doing the action step in order to achieve the value, it drops exponentially. And you can really simplify the experience too if you're not so focused on the task, but you're focused on becoming the person who would just naturally do that task.
Totally. I think that's the secret. I think you're absolutely right. We get too caught up in these tasks, and we forget that we need to be the person who would just do these tasks on a regular, natural basis.
Right. No, that's great. I mean, for me, one of the big ones that I took away just from a health perspective in terms of some dietary stuff, it's always amazing to me that when I do track my macros and track my food, it's amazing to me how much protein is enough protein. It's like, I'll set my protein levels, and I feel really good about the scientific rationale as to why I said it there. And then I'll eat what I consider to be like, oh, I eat a lot of protein, but then I'll actually do the macros and I'll realize it's still not even close to what I've set based on the scientific, rationale for what the protein content really should be. And so it's been interesting to do that over the last, month and a half. It just takes time, it takes, you got to kind of mentally let go. And this is where data is really valuable, right? Because you're measuring, you're tracking, you're getting feedback about things, and then you're applying them versus, and so this goes outside just the protein idea. Reality exists, as we've talked about many, many times. And the more data you have, the easier it is for you to not rely so much on the experience and the, trusting, whatever you think is happening, but actually getting real information. So whether it be protein content, whether it be, your training frequency, you're like, well, I think I train 4 days a week. But then you go back and you look at your checklist or your calendar and you realize that over the last 6 months, you train 2.3 times per week. Like, oh, that's not 4 times. Okay. So, again, my takeaway this year was, reality exists. And the more I can track and measure, as much as that's, probably painful for some people, the more I can track and measure and have accountability systems in place to get real data and to check in on that, the better the results I'm going to be getting.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff like that. It's funny. That's one of those things. Rachelle's reading a book called Atomic Habits, and it's a good book. She likes talking about it, and I love hearing about it. And she's like, I know you know already. She always pre-frames everything she's going to tell me with. Sorry, not everything, but she pre-frames some of the things that she's going to tell me with. I know that you already know this. Right. I go, yeah, but just because I already know it doesn't mean that I'm doing it, and doesn't mean that I can't benefit from the lessons. Right. Something like reality exists. We all know that, but you can't hear it enough. Like, you're tracking your stuff like that. That's the stuff that's the stuff that most people are like, yeah, I got this. And I'm one of those people. Yeah, I got this. So just you telling me that, I'm like, yes, I need to make sure that I'm doing that.
Right. Oh, well, for me, it's the next step is for me to actually have a tracking system for my training. Because it's really easy for me, even though I have the Fit Club literally 10 steps from my office door, it's so easy for me to skip training sessions because I just get caught up in work and there's all these other things and, projects that I'm excited about. And although training is important to me, there's other things that supersede it in terms of values. And so I just naturally forget about it. Some days I get home like, oh shoot, I didn't even train today. And so I'm very curious if I actually track it, what the actual results are going to be.
Well, you know what they're going to be.
Well, yes, they're going to be great. I'm curious as to how much I actually am training was my point. In my head, I think I know how much I'm training, but same as protein, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be blown away by the fact that I'm not training as much as I think that I am.
Right. So, I mean, as we're wrapping things up, I think that one of the important things to remember as you're going through this process, and just from observing a lot of people and even myself and my past behavior, there's this tendency to be embarrassed and not want to look at the things that we didn't excel at or that we didn't do well at, right? There's this tendency to want to look the other way, but the real power is when you're actually looking at them.
Yeah.
Right. Like real people who are really high level. One of the things that I've noticed from them is forget that they're not even scared. They love making mistakes because they know that the lesson is coming and they know that they can quickly leverage that into something looking forward. So if you're going to do this process, please don't be embarrassed by the fact that, you did something that you didn't like, or, you tried something and it was a horrible failure. That's where the gold lies.
Yeah. That's true. And having that data is so valuable, and being willing to look at it objectively, to not get emotionally caught up, in whether you're succeeding or failing, but just recognize that, okay, well, this is what the data is telling me in any area. This could be anything from your diet to your training to other habits that you're implementing or any other area of your life. The more you're willing to look at it and the more you're willing to be open to what's really happening, the faster you're gonna be able to change that cycle into a success cycle versus, because this is what really happens, is you don't look at it, you think you know what's happening, so you essentially remove the possibility that there's a problem in that area as the potential problem that's holding you back.
Exactly right.
Right? You're looking for a solution. You can't figure out why something's not changing or growing or, unfolding the way you want. But in your mind, you think, well, I've already audited all these things that it could be the problem, but you know what? None of those are the problem. Of course, you didn't base it on any type of metric. You just based it on what you felt or what you thought. But without actually digging into those things, you end up in this cycle where you're just spinning your wheels over and over and over again. And of course, if you just were willing to look at the data, get the information, regardless of what it says, you would actually be able to break that cycle faster, get into the next level of success faster, make more mistakes, and repeat that cycle over and over and over again. And you're going to really see some incredible results if you implement that. So let's plan for that in 2019, Kreisho.
Sounds good. I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. So guys, go to the show notes. We put in the Think by Design manual and grab that for free. And you can also join in on the free Think by Design 30-day challenge and check that out at lifebydesign.com/podcast. And thank you for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.